All right. Welcome back to episode 2 of Home Growers Hangout. Tonight we've got a true legend in the building, Mr. Rick Campanella, a.k.a. Mr. Soul, founder and master breeder of Brothers Grimm Seeds. If you know your genetics, you know the impact. He's the breeder of legendary stuff, Cindy 99, G13, Rosetta Stone, Princess Hayes. Been breeding since '86, through prohibition, trained nuclear engineer. That level of discipline has shown in his work. Since 2015, he's been producing stable, feminized photoperiod seeds for both home and commercial cultivators. His Rosetta Stone has earned top honors in High Times in 2018, and he was inducted into the Seed Bank Hall of Fame recently. Introduced legend, the man, the myth, the legend behind just absolute nuttiness, Mr. Rick Campanella himself. We really appreciate you taking the time to hang, brother.
Yeah. Thank you for coming up with us.
We good? Can you hear Rick? Uh-oh. What, did we lose something? What's going on?
I'm hearing most of it. There's some glitches and cutting out and that sort of thing.
Okay. Sorry about that.
I hear you.
All right, cool. So let's start off by, so you've been breeding since 1986. What's one thing about cannabis genetics today that excites you? I'm having like a delay here.
Now you're directing the question at me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like you're cutting out a lot, and so I wasn't sure if you started a conversation with someone else. What excites me about breeding today? There's a lot of variety to choose from, and the fact that we have legality really opens the door to doing many things that in the past we'd have to kind of keep it on the down low, and it was just not that we couldn't be as open about what we were doing, and the access to certain genetics were more difficult. Today it's a lot easier to get whatever you're interested in working with.
Yeah, that's for sure. That couldn't have been any more of a statement right there. Back in the day, like we were talking about, I think it was last week with a lot of the genetics back in the day, we would stuff money in an envelope and send them to Timbuktu, and 3 months later you would hope that you got something in the mail. Like people don't realize how good they have it these days with genetics and just access to it and whatnot.
Yeah, man. We used to grow out the old bag seeds, you know what I mean, back in the woods.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I personally have a question about Cinderella 99. So did you have any, when you first made it, do you have any idea or any, inkling that it would become the cultural phenom that it has in cannabis? I can't tell you anybody that I know that really hasn't run it that's been around for a while,
Yep, and I got another pack in my collection.
Yeah. Very proud of that. I'm happy to be able to say, the most cannabis connoisseurs over the entire, world mention C99 in their top 5 if they're asked, what's the top 5 strains you've ever smoked in your life. That C99 seems to come up in that group all the time, and I think that you can kind of think of it as you asked me, did I realize what was going to happen? And, it kind of made history in a certain way. And people who are making history rarely realize at the time that they're making history. And that was certainly the case.
Yeah. My thing is, I think today I think there's too much chasing of wanting to be historical versus just doing the work and letting, God decide, you know what I mean? Or the grower, decide what gets that elevation. I think there's way too much people, trying. That's their goal.
Yeah, that's basically what happened with me. Was I was just doing a certain project that was extremely interesting to me, and I was devoted to doing it right. And it took about 2 years to develop Cinderella 99 from the original clone. And it was interesting every step of the way. Kept me busy mentally, trying to figure out what was the right move to do next. And it basically came down to breeding out the male in the equation and making the seed line mimic the female that I started with.
And what was
they were regular seeds where you had male and female. It wasn't feminized. Yeah.
What's your preference, Rick? If you're running stuff for, not just for breeding, but like just for yourself, regs or femmes, what's your go-to? You prefer one or the other, or either is fine?
Well, I mean, theoretically, if you think about it, there's absolutely no reason to ever run a male. What we want are female plants, really. So I prefer to work with feminized seed as long as they're done correctly. There's a right and a wrong way to make fem seeds. And that was the problem back in the early 2000s and late 90s when people were trying to do feminized seeds, but they didn't really understand what they were doing. But, my philosophy is we're trying to grow female plants. The males are basically useless. And once you understand the right way to feminize, you don't need it. I haven't had a male in my garden for 10 years, basically.
Oh, wow. So I would take it then. So that old adage with people like, oh, regs are more, aggressive, this and that. That's just more of one of those wives' tales than reality. I would say,
Pheno searching. I mean, I want
Yeah.
regs. You know what I mean? If I'm really if I was hunting something to breed, I'd prefer to hunt. I'd prefer to hunt regs just because we might find that really oddball unicorn sitting in there somewhere.
I would imagine you could find that in a pack of femmes as well. You know what I mean? Absolutely. Yeah. So, let's see here. So, hold on.
I'd like to know what he misses about the old school ways, even though it was tougher and you were hiding. What do you miss about how breeding used to be? There's got to be something you miss about it too.
Growing or breeding.
Well, I think I kind of miss the the brotherhood or the camaraderie of the people who were working with cannabis, and we all had to basically remain hidden. It was a hidden secret society, and there's something kind of cool about that, like now it's like wide open. Anybody, come one, come all.
It was a click,
and you took pride in your ability to remain anonymous and fly under the radar and not get caught.
Yeah.
So that excitement of being an outlaw, I guess, is what I would miss.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was thinking. There's a certain little bit of edge. You know what I mean? But it's hats off to you for sticking through that all the years.
Here's a question for you, Rick.
Fortunate not to get
in your work breeding, Rick. Like, how do you personally define stable genetics?
Yeah. All right.
Can everybody see?
Wait for the train to pass there, or the fire engine, or whatever that.
I'm in Brooklyn.
I'm not seeing anything. I'm looking at a black screen.
I got a black screen too.
It doesn't stop. The sirens.
So you had the train passing by.
Okay, well, I'm way out in the sticks. You'll never hear.
So,
I could tell you were in New York somewhere.
yeah, Brooklyn.
So your question,
You're in New York City.
one more time, your question. Yeah, I lived on Times Square, West 44th Street for 4 years before I moved to Colorado.
Man. Yeah, so you know exactly what you're dealing with all the sirens and all that
I know
crap.
New York inside. I'm in New York. Yeah,
It's too loud, man.
Born in New York and spent most of my life in New York.
Oh, okay. That's good to know.
You got no picture, Red. Still got no picture.
Yeah.
No picture?
No.
Yeah, I don't know if you're seeing me, that's great, but I don't see. I see just a black screen right now.
Yeah.
Hold on 1 second.
That's what I got as a black screen.
I don't know what I hit. Hold on. No.
I see you.
Hey, I see you.
There we are.
There we go.
Okay,
I guess I hit something with my hand on accident. I didn't even realize it. I'm sorry about that, guys. Totally missed that one.
That's all right.
I thought it was just my screen.
Well,
Still on a move.
Rick, what would you say? What would you say was the most impressive, like free breeder pheno you ever found? Like as an old school strain.
I always say the Mac 1 in the past, what is it, maybe 10 or 12 years, that
About 12 years.
I never saw anything in all these years of breeding that made me sit up and take notice like Mac 1 from the Capulator. That is a unique clone that I've kept now for as long as when I was first presented that clone. I've never lost it, and it's still something that I'll grow it just for my personal supply to smoke, but it does not breed at all very well. I mean, once in a great while, I've been able to combine it with something that actually turned out. We had a Mac 99, for example, crossed it with Princess, the mother of the Cinderella line, and that actually worked out where the plants came out nice. But more often than not, even if you ask Capulator, you cross Mac 1 with anything and you're going to get twisted, gnarly genetics that just come out much worse than the parents.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, I guess some people are saying it's a triploid and it just really doesn't have the right genetic capacity to breed with. And I've tried it on both ways. I've made it as the pollen donor as well as the seed producing plant, and neither one of them ever really produced a seed line that was worth a shit.
That's like Peyton.
Like I said,
Peyton.
I had some Mac that I posted.
Peyton's a nightmare to get to spit pollen too, man.
Did you say painting?
Peyton, yeah. I've had nothing but nightmares trying to get that thing to spit pollen. It was so stubborn. Wind up having to go through a lot of plants to actually get enough pollen. But it was such a hard reversal. I don't know how guys are doing it so well now. The original cut that I had, that thing was a nightmare to deal with. And that's my favorite strain. I love Peyton. Like for me, for being a commercial fisherman for years.
It's more than just.
Shit. I'm getting a delay. Hold on.
Yeah. Some plants, they really don't lend themselves to being a pollen donor because you spray them with STS and then they end up really not. They might grow male flowers, but then a lot of times the pollen can be impotent and not make seeds. Yeah. Once in a great while, I'll run across a plant like that. But
yeah,
the ones that I really wanted always worked.
So I want to just kind of shift into something that I think is like the elephant in the room in the community, and something that I know that you and Laura are gigantic on right now is the advocacy with the impending hemp bill. So if you don't mind, I'd like to, pick your brain a little bit about that. What kind of impact do you really think this is going to have on breeders and home growers? I know you guys are in really talking to lobbyists and stuff like that and whatnot. So I'm really curious to hear.
Well, for whatever reason, I don't know who decided to change the language in the hemp bill, but they had written it correctly in the past. And now, for whatever reason, they're calling seeds an issue that's so big of an issue that we may not even be able to sell seeds if this bill passes in the way the language is written. Because, I mean, for reasons that are totally unfathomable by me, why they would take marijuana and lower it to a Schedule 3 and then make the seeds basically like a Schedule 1 drug. And so Laura, my wife, would tell you that we've had a dozen conversations where she's ended up getting just frustrated and walking out of the room because I keep asking her, but yeah, that doesn't make sense. I don't understand why they would want to do that. And she's like, well, go look it up, And, I think that there's an old politicians and babies' diapers need to be changed frequently for the exact same reasons. And, when you get a bill written by a bunch of legislators who really don't understand what they're talking about, then the language can come out in a way where unintended results result.
Yeah. I mean, it makes no sense to me.
I think if
either,
I had 5 minutes to talk to any of the people on the panel, I would be able to convince them that they're making a mistake. But I haven't been given that floor. They need to dress me up and put me in a suit and send me to Washington, and I would go have a serious conversation with those folks.
You just stand out in front of the damn place. You don't want to bump into one of them. You know what I mean? Like, it's literally like that. So, it's almost at that point where it's going to have to start to be boots on the ground in Washington soon. You know what I mean? There's not a lot of time left.
Maybe I could get them to take me on a fishing trip and we all get out on a small boat together and we wouldn't be able to, avoid talking to each other, and the subject we could really hammer it through. Yeah. In the past couple of years, I've become quite a bass fisherman, so I'd love to take them out and do some bass fishing and talk some sense into them.
Yeah, something's got to be done, And the good thing is, if you bring them out 30, 40 miles and they don't like what you have to say, there's always, you can swim home. See how
Exactly.
Just chuck them overboard and drive real slow in front of them. Be like, you're gonna sign the bill?
I wish I could say more about it, and explain exactly what the people are thinking that wrote the bill, but I sure as hell don't understand what they did there. And I can't understand why they wouldn't be able to just reach into that bill and rewrite the language a little bit so
it's literally like a couple of words
that they're making. And Laura and the people who are.
It's
basically what they're doing is they're requiring that there's a. They want a lineage. Basically, like if seeds are being sold, then. You have to provide some proof that the plant that produced the seeds was a hemp plant, not a marijuana plant.
Yeah. What are you going to ask it? You know what I mean?
That's the simplest way I can explain what the bill, the way.
It's insane. So it's just
there's certainly ways around that I'd be willing to, reach back into my old school roots would give me a couple of ideas that would be able to skirt around that. Like, for example, just keeping a hemp plant growing on your property, that anytime they wanted a sample of the plant that produced the seeds, you just give them that cut of the hemp plant and claim that the seeds came from that. Well, who could say otherwise? There's no other way to prove it,
Yeah, literally,
But, my wife is very strict about trying to stay within the boundaries of the law. We're a family. We have a daughter 10 years old, and we don't want to have issues with the law.
Who does?
Big or small, and so we've always been very proud that we're running 100% legally and within the law. That's the whole reason I moved to Colorado in the first place. I was living in New York City, and I couldn't do this work there. I had heard that, Colorado is one of the, like at that time, I think it was only California and Colorado who had legalized marijuana. And so I could come here and work within the boundaries of legality and run the business, 100% legal, make a website and actually, sell our product. And so I still had a couple of I's that needed to be dotted and a couple of T's that needed to be crossed when Laura and I got together. And since, she's a mother and we're, married and she's running a family business, she went in and made sure that all the little details were seen to and that we were operating legally. And now this is the biggest, kick in the ass is this new bill coming up that may take all of that hard work away,
How about CBD? What are you hearing about CBD? I'm hearing that's going to become an issue too.
What was that, Charlie?
Well, that's kind of off my radar. I've never been interested in CBD.
Yeah. The my question is that I would like to get to the audience is, I know that me and Laura have spoken in the past few months, and she's kept me up to date as far as what's been going on and whatnot. And what can growers do to help advocate to keep you guys, and other breeders in business? Like what can the guys watching this show, besides buying seeds and this and that, what can they do? Is there any petitions going around that you guys have going, to get their names, just, to help you guys push, Is there anything specific that you can throw at the audience that for them to get in line and help?
On our website, if you go to www.Brothers Grimm Seeds, the opportunity to donate toward the support of our lobbyists that are working in Washington to try to get the bill corrected before it's ratified next year in November, or this year in November, sorry. So you can definitely donate, and you'll even get some free seeds for your donation.
Yeah, guys. They're and just go to the website.
So go to brothersgrimmseeds.com and check it out. There's you can make a donation, large or small.
It should be right about there.
It'll be pretty clear, I think, once you're there.
Yeah, I'll go to the show there on the page.
Because guys, in all honesty, everybody's sitting at home comfortable growing and whatnot, and the companies that we like and we support, not all of them are in line with this, but Brothers Grimm is really, seriously, as far as everybody that I've spoken to, and I'm on LinkedIn a lot and I speak to a lot of people, you guys are really, at the tip of the spear as far as the community goes, as far as breeders, and pushing the lobbyists, and really getting involved with Washington, So I really hope anybody who is watching, jump on, grab a pack, and help keep this going, because this is a serious thing. People are taking it for granted, I think, and buying seeds early and all this other crap. And that doesn't, if it's not targeted, it's not going to help. So, if you're going to make some purchases, seeds, jump on brothersgrimmseeds.com and, help support the movement, guys, for real.
Yeah. Amen.
You guys have been working your asses off.
That's a great way to support us in our effort.
Yeah. So, let's move away from the hemp bill a little bit, because I know it gets everybody depressed. So let me see here. So if looking ahead 5 to 10 years, what does the cannabis genetics landscape look like in your eyes if everything, stays how it is now? Where do you see the market going? Do you see more, type 1, type 2, type 3 stuff? Where do you see it?
I mean, it's always been a very unpredictable topic. You never know what's going to be coming down the pike next. But, the thing that we can sort of look back and over the past 30 years or so, observe how potency has increased, resin production has increased, the ability to put your hands on multiple different strains with different characteristics of terpenes, of potency, or growing profiles, all those kinds of things. Just the variety of available genetics, I think, will probably continue to expand. And there may be a few like real shining stars that come out that people get hyped about. The way they did about Cinderella 99 and some of the others along the way. Apollo 13 was a big fan favorite.
Yeah,
and
I remember when that came
Rosetta
out.
Stone made it into High Times top 10 in 2018. Yeah. And so we just continue to keep bringing the fire, and I keep my nose to the grindstone and do what I've always done. And Laura's a little more on the forefront of the legal side of things and getting that path cleared for us. So I'm also going to be celebrating my 67th birthday on Monday. So
Congratulations,
I'm at an
man.
age now where I feel like, I'm trying to semi-retire, like I'm thinking at this point I can just direct breeding. I've got a couple of excellent understudies that have been with me for years now that they're ready to sort of just take direction from me and do the grunt work. So that's where I see myself going. And of course, Laura's 20 years younger than me, and so she still has a lot of vim and vigor and wants to continue pushing boundaries and envelopes. And so she enjoys being in the fight, and she's a great marketer. Her advertising and marketing and ideas that she's brought, like our tester program, has been hugely successful. And I always tell her, honey, you're doing things with this company I never even would have thought of, and she's increased our business by like a factor of 5. So
that's amazing.
I gotta say that the future is feminized.
I got a question for you as far as like from like if you worked through prohibition, you were growing back in the day, and whatnot. If hold on, I lost. All right. What's one lesson from those underground days that today's growers need to understand or miss? Or today's breeders, I should say, need to understand,
Well, I would say, in my observation, it's kind of, you don't see as many people who are unique. It's a little bit of a, I guess I'm a breeder. I'm going to wear a certain kind of hat. I'm going to talk a certain kind of way. And, those kinds of things where in the old day, it was like each guy was very different. You'd meet somebody and he's like, okay, this guy is nothing like me, but he's also another great breeder. And I think I've seen, as legalization came into the picture, that you go to a party or a gathering of cannabis people, and the ones that are doing this kind of work all kind of like, they almost look like they're in uniform. So, that they all kind of like wear the same kind of hat and talk the same kind of way and believe the same kinds of things. And so I miss the uniqueness of each individual.
Yeah. That I can definitely say that much, man. It's like everybody's like a car, like it's like almost like what do you call that? Like a carbon copy, or like these days. It's like there's no originality no more. Not even in like you said, even in the look of people. It's like everybody wears a one uniform almost now.
Kind of like that, huh?
Such a good way to put it, dude.
I got a breeding question.
Of course. There's
So
a lot of
back
different
when you were-
opinions about things. Oh yeah, please bring it.
Oh, all right. So like going back to where you were talking about the Mac, okay, the Mac one just doesn't breed well with things. Is there anything that you've learned to like preemptively pick out strains that just won't work together? Like, even though something might sound kind of good to you, like, but there'd be something that, like the RH factors, but of cannabis plants.
Yeah, I mean, you don't really know until you try. I guess that's still true. You can't judge what's going to happen until you try it. And a lot of times people will say to me, "What do you think of this plant? Do you think it has potential?" You know, and so, and they're showing me a plant that's in vegetative state. I'm like, you're not going to know anything. The proof of the pudding is when it's flowering. You really can't judge a plant by its vegetative state. So yeah, I'm a great believer in just, show me. I should have been born in Missouri, because it's like the show me state is Missouri, isn't it? For me, it's always like the proof is in the pudding. You,
I mean, seeing is believing for me too.
Find out. I think the kids said.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, seeing believing for me too. I mean, it's just, it's like the hydro bio. I so bucked on
I
adding anything to my grows.
I have a certain.
Go ahead.
You go ahead, sir. I'm sorry. I feel like I was cutting you off there. I just can't hear all of the.
It's in and out a little bit on that.
Well, let's switch to an audience question real quick. So one of the audience members, Mr.
Well, I have a certain philosophy about breeding that I alluded to earlier when you were asking me about regulars and feminized. And in my opinion, breeding with females is the future. There's really no need to ever have a male in your breeding program again. When you think about it, that has been the bane of all breeding for cannabis in the past, has been the fact that people thought that they had to use a male. And when you are trying to evaluate what would be the outcome of this cross, you're looking at a female plant that all of the female qualities that it has because it's female. And then you have a male that you're thinking of crossing with it, and you don't know any of the female qualities because it's not a female. And so there's always a lot of guesswork when you're crossing a male to a female. But when you cross two females, you know exactly what the female qualities of both parents are. And so the results are much more predictable.
Yeah. All right. So I have a question from one of the growers in the audience here, Mr. Sol, for you. So the Gorilla BX, is that close to Gorilla Glue number 4? Or what cut is that from if it's not?
Well, I got a cut called Gluey, Baby Gluey, we originally called it. We kind of just start calling it Gluey, of course, because you tend to nickname everything or reduce the size of the name. But yeah, we started out with Gluey as our cross with C99 to make Grimm glue. And we back crossed it back to C99, and I think if you look at our Gorilla Glue BX, that's the one that the questioner is referring to. And the original cut, the Gluey cut, from everything that I've seen of Gorilla Glue number 4 versus my Baby Gluey cut, I think that I just have something that's a little better. It's not the original Gorilla Glue 4, but it is something that I feel was superior.
How is the plant structure on that?
I hope that answers his question.
Yeah, I'm sure.
On that one.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, we get a dense buds, and it's a fast flowering 8-week.
Okay, so here we go with the fast flower. I'm going to ask this one since we have a breeder here. Fast flower. If you had to tell somebody who's never heard that term before, what's the difference between that, and traditional photo period?
When you say, you're asking to clarify when I say fast flowering?
Yeah, like these fast flowers. You know how companies have fast flower, they have photo period, they have autos and whatnot. the difference between the fast flower and, the traditional photo period.
It's a photo period plant that takes less time in the flowering phase than another one. Like early flowering would be a plant that you put outdoors and it's completely finished in, say, early September. That would be a very fast flowering plant. Whereas a late flowering plant would be one that is finished flowering in November or something. And the typical plant finishes in early October. So indoors, that means that instead of flowering for, I'll use the example of Haze. Back in the day, Haze, which is one of my favorite legacy strains of all time, when that was produced, the flowering time was 14 weeks. And 14 weeks is a really long time to flower when most of our strains finish in 8 to 9 weeks. And some are closer to like 7.5, and ready to harvest in less time, hence fast.
Yeah. Well, because like I say, I understand it, you know what I mean? But I've had people, ask and whatnot, and it confuses people, because they think it's, like that it's going to start flowering on its own, you know what I mean? So it's more or less just
no, that would be an auto flower.
Yeah, but the question comes up enough that I figure we could do it. So here's a question for you. Out of your recent strains, which is your favorite?
You're cutting out, but I think I can read the question of any of our recent strains. What is my favorite? There's a strain called Ossifer, which really stands out. And I believe that that's one of my, that I'm most excited about the results from that. Ossifer, which is a cross of Cap Junkie, which was the breedable version of Mac 1, if, in my opinion. You have Cap Junkie, which carries almost all of the same qualities as a Mac 1, but it actually makes seeds and can be used as a pollen donor as well. So Ossifer, just that really turned out as an amazing result, but it wasn't too unpredictable in the sense that both Cap Junkie as a female plant, was just demonstrating incredible qualities. And then you have Rosetta Stone, which is another female with amazing qualities. And as I was saying before, when you bring two females together and make seeds from them, the results are a lot more predictable. They're going to carry the traits of both parents, as we all do. And when you can actually see the female qualities that are being brought into the cross from both parents at the same time, like I said, that's going to be something where you can be reasonably sure that you can predict what the results are going to be like.
Yeah. Always good to have that prediction. So, all right. So
my favorite Brothers Grimm strain, somebody is asking, what's your favorite Brothers Grimm strain?
Mine, I like the Cindy. When I grew Cinderella, it was when I was sick.
Should I answer that question? What's my favorite Brothers Grimm strain?
Yeah,
I would say I'm going to say Cinderella 99 is my number one favorite Brothers Grimm strain because it's the strain that I created that made me famous, basically. So I always will have to take my hat off to that. That was a project that really made a splash in the world and the community. And then as far as, something to smoke that I really enjoy, I still am kind of stuck on the Rosetta Stone. I really like the Grimm Glue. We work with truffles, white truffles. We've made a Grimm truffles. That's another one that's just it's kind of an aphrodisiac. I've had many women say that it really turns them on when they smoke the truffles.
So, don't mind. Somebody's probably just getting chased.
Somebody's quoting a line from the Pope of Greenwich Village here. He said, "Charlie,
No city life
guy
for
a
sure.
prize, man. I think that's hilarious."
Yeah.
He said, "Charlie." You know that movie, The Pope of Greenwich Village, with Mickey Rourke?
Of course, bro. What are you kidding me? The Pope of Greenwich Village. Yeah, man.
If you're from New York and you've never seen The Pope of Greenwich Village, you got to get me and check it out.
If
That's
you
one of my
haven't seen
all-time
that
favorite
movie,
movies. Somehow this guy knew that.
Yep. So, so you've seen genetics travel from the underground circles to global markets. What's something that got lost along the way that you wish would make a comeback?
Something that I wish would make a comeback? I
Yeah.
think we're kind of doing that with Blue Dream, because I remember when I first came here to Colorado, it was like, oh no, not another Blue Dream. Oh God, you know. And so it kind of fell out of favor for a while, but it really shouldn't have, because the flavor is fantastic. It's a great high, and it's as a grower, you should like it for the
when here's one for you. So when you smoke something new, as you know, what's the first thing that you're like your mentally starts going off, you know, as a breeder? Are you breaking it down, or are you just enjoying the ride?
Oh, I break it down. Yeah, I really, I'm a student of the plant, you know, still at this time. And when one of my assistants does a lot of side grows outside of his work here, and he'll very often bring something in that's new and different and say, "Hey, man, smoke some of this, and what do you think?" And there's such a variety of flavors and aromas and highs that, you know, it continually never ceases to amaze me that, you know, there's a flavor I haven't, you know, tasted before, or, you know, the potency, or even the opposite, where it's like, man, this tastes great, but I'm not getting high enough, you know. So I guess that's my number one when I'm thinking about smoking a strain. It should really, you know, be the high that it gives you. I mean, that's where the rubber hits the road. Yeah, it's nice if it tastes good too, you know. But I think the reason we're smoking is to get high, and so yeah, that's where I'd say, you know, I put my most emphasis.
You think this chase for high THC is taken away? Because I mean, I've had a lot of bad experiences as of like the last year or two with like these high potency strains and whatnot. You know, they just don't hit. Like, I mean, you see guys, you know, they're claiming 35%. You grow it out, it's, you know, it lacks terps. You know, there's always something missing from the equation with those high THC strains, in my opinion. You know, like, what do you think? You think that chase for that high THC is worth it, or you think it should be more, you know, like the terpenes and you know, and that versus that chase?
I believe that it's better to have a balance, and that, you know, pure THC is not really the goal. Yeah, I try to announce like I'm contradicting myself there, but, you know, the potency needs to be there, but it doesn't need to be 35%. You know, clearly we have a entourage effect from all the different cannabinoids in the smoke, and sometimes it works out that it may not have the highest THC, but it gives you the most pleasant high, or it makes you feel, you know, the way you'd like to feel. When we were younger, I'm going back to my high school days, we always would say, you know, if the weed makes you paranoid, then it's real potent, you know, basically.
Yeah.
I remember being in a coffee shop in Amsterdam, and in 1987 or 89, and I smoked some weed, and I hadn't gotten high for over 3 months, and I got sent to Amsterdam on a business trip, and of course I went straight to a coffee shop and ordered some weed and sat down and rolled a joint and smoked, and man, I was so high, I was so paranoid, I got so nervous and embarrassed when I went up to the counter to ask for more, and the girl kind of like called me out, like, fuck you, don't talk like that, because I was just using slang, like saying, oh, let's do that again. And she's like, do what again? Like she was offended. I only meant like, okay, whatever I just ordered, I'd like another one, But
Yeah,
she was
tell
like,
me about it.
who the hell do you think you're talking about? Tell me we'll do that again, because she thought I was saying something. I was being
different
sexual or
culture.
something, and totally not what I meant, So
Some
it just
I'll
sticks
tell
out
you.
in my mind as being, the times when I was my highest is when I was the most paranoid or feeling scared that, people were all looking at me or something, right? I was on a train coming back from Amsterdam one time with pure haze. Like you could smell it through the container. And the whole time I'm sitting on the train going back to Brussels, I'm thinking, oh my God, somebody's going to walk over here and, pull me off this train and, I'll get in trouble or something. But nobody ever said anything. It was all in my imagination.
So,
But yeah, that's when you're high, right? If
yeah,
you plenty high.
that Mexican brick, man, back in the day, that Mexican brick shit, when we were kids, that stuff used to make me literally, I would want to jump out a window. It just made me the jitteriest.
You seem too young to remember Mexican brick weed, but
oh, hell no, bro. Are you kidding me? I'm 50. I'm 50, so I'm, and most of us here are probably, close to it. So,
all right.
But that Mexican brick, man. Yeah, thank God. I hope when I'm, 70, that it still looks like that. You know what I mean? Because it's starting to go downhill now, the grades and everything, and it's starting to turn the
I
corner.
wondered how those things never got molded up, those bricks,
Bro, that shit was moldy. Anything you couldn't know when you were smoking that shit back in the day, mold and this and that. You broke it up, you smoked the fucking seeds.
You were just happy you got to leave.
Oh, that stuff was the worst, bro. Absolutely hated that Mexican brick.
In high school,
Man, I grew a couple of really beautiful plants out of some of that junk.
That was all you could get your hands on.
Yeah, I mean, even in like
from the seeds. If you took the seeds from that brickweed Mexican,
that was one of the first plants I ever grew.
Way too tall and way too long flowering. I lived in upstate New York. Yeah. I remember for it to finish flowering, you pretty much had to grow it indoors because, if you grew it outside, the flowering period was so long, it would be into November by the time the thing was not even finished.
Yeah, it was still ramping up. You know what I mean? That stuff. I remember one of the first ones I ever grew was from a bag of that crap in my backyard, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. So it was the greatest thing next to sliced bread when that thing started budding, but it wasn't ready. You know what I mean? The thing was green as hell. We chopped that thing down and threw it in the fucking microwave, I think, to dry it. We were so ready to get that plant going, and then we smoked it, and just it was man.
Well, and that's where the stipulation of homegrown came from. It's a whole new ball game nowadays.
So we have a question here from Brian Helmer, who's in the audience. Fire New Breed wants to know, what terpenes have you been chasing the most lately, Mr.
I
Soul?
see they want to know what terpenes we've been chasing here at Brothers Grimm and what are the hardest ones to achieve, and are we working with any skunks? Skunk, when I first got here in 2015 to Colorado, skunk was something that everybody was chasing. And, in my day, the late 80s and 90s, the skunk number one was the main skunk strain that was out there. And then there were a lot of crosses with that, so on. And many of our cultivars do have some skunk number one in them. But we've never consciously tried to create a new skunk strain. For what reason? I guess it's not that interesting to me. I know other people like that, but me growing up through that period, it's kind of passé, and I'm more excited by the newer terpenes, that stuff that smells like, you have these confectionery, like candy and fruity, as well as on the other side of the plate, the earthy, those types of strains with that OG flavor. Those are still really interesting to me. And I still, like my assistant, Alaska, who comes in with something new from someplace else that I've never tried, I'll go, well, I can really sit up and take notice of that. That's something very interesting. He's brought Fire and Ice is a strain that he brought to our cultivation, and we're working with that. And so when I smoke that, it's the parent plant of a hybrid that we'll create eventually, and I think it has great potential. And it's a very earthy and very stony effect from the weed too. So the terpenes, I can't say there's any particular terpene profile that I'm chasing, or I'll go back to the Capulator. The Mac 1 is just like ambrosia, to my nose when I rub that bud, and that's that. I don't know how to explain.
I know what you're talking about.
Everything I'm looking for. It's got the sparkling champagne and a richness, and you pass a bakery and you smell dough, bread being baked or something. There's something like that going on in it.
Buttery, creamy. So it's just
I love that, and I've never
on and on. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah. I always remember a time after high school, we all met at a friend's house. Yeah, after high school, there was one evening, afternoon when we got out of school, and we all went to our friend's house, and he had a big pound of weed that he was breaking out for us to all check it out. And I remember all the different characters, like the cool kids from school all trying it, and then they'd make a comment about what they thought of the weed. And I remember coming away from it thinking, this is like a wine tasting. Everybody's swirling the glass and looking at the wine, figuratively. And it's like, this or this. And that appealed to me. I really have to say, my wife always says I'm 5-star, because I enjoy the finer things in life, I suppose. But that was really a hook for me at that time. I was like, this marijuana thing is really interesting, because, it's kind of like a wine tasting event when people get together and they try different weeds and then comment on what they're tasting and how the effects are hitting them and so on.
Yeah. I know that's one of my favorite things about meeting up.
That's my answer to terpenes.
So how do you decide when a line is finished versus when it still needs some work?
Well, there's a breeding technique that comes from the original breeders, that worked with plants hundreds of years ago. And that's where this whole F1, F2, F3, and so on comes from. And we don't really do that kind of breeding anymore, because there's such a thing as artificial light. The reason they had to do those successive generations of F1, F2, F3, and so forth is because, at the end of the season, without artificial light, your plants are going to die, and you'll have to start the next spring with the seeds from the last year's crop. And so there's a lot of misinformation among people who are not only the purchasers of seeds, but also the breeders, that they think that like there's something that you still need to work with F1, F2, F3, that type of thing. But that's completely unnecessary today because, we have artificial light. We don't need to work it that way. An F1 cross of two different plants a lot of times just hits the mark the first time. And in those days when you didn't have artificial lights, you'd never be able to recreate that because you lost the parents at the end of the season. They're dead. But now you can keep a plant alive. We've got clones that are over 30 years old in our facility.
Wow.
And so in order to get that same exact cross, all you have to do is keep the same two parents and keep making the seeds from those two parents. So what we tend to do is back cross, if necessary, to one of the two parents to give it more of whatever that one was bringing to the table. And that's usually what you're looking for when you're trying to improve the line. We started with these two parents. The offspring are not enough like the one as we wished. So we're going to take the offspring and back cross it to the parent that we like to get that the effect or the terpenes or whatever it is that we're trying to gain more of. So the breeding is different now, and you can learn a lot about breeding, obviously, by reading textbooks and looking back at, all of the Mendelian rules of breeding and so on. But you have to also remember those guys didn't have artificial light. They couldn't keep plants alive any longer than the one season. And so they were limited by that. And a lot of the methodologies that were developed during that time are a result of that. And we have to break out of that mold and understand that like that's totally unnecessary now.
Yeah. If when you look at today's market, and different breeders and whatnot, can you tell if they're thinking long term versus just chasing like quick hype and quick profit versus like actually looking long term?
I mean, I guess if I were focusing on that, I might find that I could answer that, but I don't really think about other people's what they're doing. I just focus on what I'm doing.
What's one habit that separates like a great grower from an average grower, regardless of genetics?
Well, I think that, adherence to, doing things the right way, not cutting corners, understanding what you're doing, researching the science behind what you're doing. Those are the kinds of things that I would say are important, and you asked me earlier about my education, and I have a master's degree in nuclear engineering. And so my tendency as a person is to be analytical. Mathematics and science, are the supporting pillars underneath what I do. So I guess stick to the science and, don't be misled by, bro science, if you want to call it that. But, this is a black art, people I used to work with sometimes use that term, a black art, which means that it's not really figured out by some research program or something. So especially back in the day when we were all hiding, in basements and garages and couldn't tell anybody what we were doing, I was living a life where my daily routine was to go to work as an engineer for 8 hours, come home and, get into the growing and breeding side of my personality and, go to bed that night, get up and start all over again. So I think that when we were hiding and weren't able to discuss openly what we were doing, there were a lot of old wives' tales that were perpetuated over, years and years. People would believe things that just weren't true or had no scientific basis to support that idea. And there's hopefully a lot less of that now, I would hope, they always say like, the internet should have made everybody, be so smart, but it's kind of had the opposite effect in many cases. But I'm an optimist. I always feel like, gee, the more information that's available and the more easy access there is to learning, you would think that people would be better educated or understand what they're doing better. So I'm hoping that continues to be the case. It's always been, when I realized I cracked the code how to make feminized seeds without getting any Hermes, that was it gave me a headache for a while, just struggling with that catch-22 of, I don't want to get Hermes, but somehow I want to make a female make pollen and then breed with it, and it took a long time to really arrive at the code there of what made it work and how you could breed with two females and never get a Hermes.
Yeah.
What I'm saying, I guess, is that by the availability of information through the internet made that possible, because I was able to look up research articles and peer-reviewed studies that on hermaphroditism, so that I understood what hermaphroditism was and what caused it. And I was shocked to learn that it was not something that was a genetic. It wasn't genetic so much as it was hormonal. And so by realizing that hormones that were the key to shifting the gender, then I could take a plant that would never Hermes and still get it to make pollen.
Nice.
Because it would be hormonally induced rather than stress induced.
So I know we're pushing past the hour. So when people take a look back 20, 30 years from now, what do you hope people say about your contribution to the plant, to the culture, to the community?
Well, I would hope that they recognize that the strains I created were, very valuable and desirable, and also that maybe I was the guy who made people start to take a more scientific approach to breeding. That would be, maybe they'd say I was a good-looking guy too at the same time. If I can have everything, and a saint of a man, like all that stuff.
Yeah. Well,
if you're gonna dream, you better dream big, right?
Yeah, might as well. What the hell, If so, two final questions that I'm going to wrap up with for you, because I know you're busy and whatnot. And everybody hang out after we're done, because we're going to do some stuff after. If you can give one piece of advice to every home grower, breeder watching right now, something they should carry with them every time they step into their garden, what would it be?
I would say learn to read your plants. Be able to look at a plant and tell instantly what it needs. There's so many times that I've coached people and tried to mentor people in growing and breeding. And one of the things that I find that the guys who are good are the ones who can look at the plant and immediately see what it needs. You should be able to tell from the shade of green that the leaves are, whether you're feeding it too much, too little, overwatering, underwatering, all those kinds of things. It should be like instantly visible to you. Like you look at that plant, this one here needs more fertilizer, or it's been getting way too much fertilizer, or it's been overwatered. Overwatering looks a lot like under fertilization too. And so one of the things I'd say is try to learn the difference between when a plant is looking overwatered versus under fertilized. Because if you make a mistake and think that it's under fertilized when it's really just overwatered, you're going to end up burning that plant.
Yeah. And
how's that?
Listen, man, I like it. I'm definitely like that, because I completely agree, because one of the biggest peeves I have is people, after years of mentoring some guys, they just still can't read the plant. You know what I mean? Like, and it's like the first thing I'm always like, read the plant, and it's like, it even comes in Braille. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, there's no reason not to, So, so before we let you go, What's next for Mr. Soul, Brothers Grimm
Yeah.
Seeds? Is anything you're working on that growers should be excited for, to keep an eye out? You know, what do we got coming down the pipe?
Well, there's always a lot of great new strains, and I always recommend that people get into our tester program, because you're going to get high quality seeds at a low price, and you'll be part of a group of people that are all testing a plant and writing back and sharing their results, and it's fun. It adds an element of fun, and you're also getting incredible genetics. Most of our testers, maybe they're, technically it's a tester, but I already know it's going to be good, so
Yeah.
you have my, you have my backing behind the seeds. You're getting them for an incredibly low price. And so, yeah, get in on that tester program. And as far as, I can't pick any one strain and just say, like, really, I'm super excited about this new one that's coming out. But, my wife, Laura, is now breeding too, and she's got Pink Portal that came out. Try Laura's stuff.
I know that you were saying earlier that you have some, that there's there's more to come on the Montel.
Let's face it, when Pink Portal came out, I think it was the top seller.
Really nice. The damn, I forgot what I was just saying.
Montel.
Oh yeah, with I know you were saying earlier that the Blue Dream, that you were going to be expanding that line with Montel. Is there anything that we can get a little?
Yeah. Yeah, yes, that's a good one. We're actually crossing the Blue Dream now with a haze.
Oh, wow.
And so that should be very interesting, because the Blue Dream has a short flowering time and haze has a long flowering time. And, I always tell people to avoid thinking that when you breed two plants together, the offspring are going to come out as if you put two different flavors of ice cream into a blender and it just, mix them evenly. They don't mix evenly. Don't expect a cross to be an even mix of the two parents. It's going to lean one way or another. And there can be a lot of variation sometimes between the offspring, that you may have, a certain percentage of them will look like the one parent, a certain percentage of them will look like the other parent, and then there may be an even larger group that all look like something that's a mix of the two. And so just always be aware that that's the way that typically things are going to come out.
Awesome. Well, Mr. Soul, it's been absolutely an amazing time getting,
there's somebody asking a question. I think it's important. I'll answer this one. There's somebody asking, what does a fem tester, what does that mean that it's a tester? It means that it's a cross that we've created that we haven't grown out. And I think that the tester program is amazing in the sense that when any breeder decides to test a cross, like they've put together two parents and they've created offspring seeds, but you don't yet know what they're going to be like until you grow them out, right? And any company who's doing this only has a certain limited number of acres or rooms that they can test. And so it's a statistics game, it's a numbers game, and the more that you grow, the bigger number of plants that you've grown, the better you can decide what the results were. And the tester program takes it to where now not only are we testing in-house to see what the outcome of that cross is, we also have thousands of our customers growing that same strain and reporting back to us their findings. So that increases the population of plants that are being tested, and the results are that much more reliable, because in statistics, there's such a thing as a population that's a meaningful population. If you only grow 10 seeds from a cross, the results are going to be not as reliable as if you grew 10,000 of those seeds and saw what they did, because then you'd be seeing a larger population, a more meaningful population that can inform the statistics as to what you can expect from that cross. So that's what.
I always say, like home growers are preservationists. You know what I mean? Like they're going to go and find stuff that, companies haven't come across. You know what I mean? And for them finding it, preserving it, and whatnot, it adds back into everything, in my opinion. You know what I mean? So the more shit you can, it's like you throw enough shit at the wall, something sticks. You know what I mean? It's one of those things. You pop enough seeds, you're going to find something radical. But it's just finite on how much you can pop. You know what I mean? Like you said, it's only so much space you have. I mean, if I can grow them on the roof of my building, I would.
Bingo.
So
I got a
anyway,
Probably be a great place to grow too.
yeah, right. I mean, except for the fact that it's like silverside, so it would probably just light everything on fire. It would just burn up there. That's the only problem at the top of the building. But anyway, so I want to thank you. I want to thank Mrs. Soul, for helping.
I'll come and visit.
Dude, anytime, man. I've had a couple of people that have popped through in the last few years.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, man. Anytime we welcome you, and even Mrs. Soul, if she ever wants to come on, she is more than welcome anytime to talk about her stuff. As you said, she has her own projects and whatnot, and we welcome any one of you guys back, man. We love you in the community, and we just want the best for you, and we hope the hemp bill gets turned down so that we can keep you going, man. It's guys like you that are why we're here.
Yeah, me too.
So I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much again, Rick, for hanging out, brother. And we will catch. Yeah.
If you invite Laura to come back and do a podcast where she's the guest, I'm sure she'd say yes. So
I hope so, man.
Recommend you give her an opportunity to come on the show herself.
I would love it, bro. I would love it because you know why?
Good talking with you. I hope to meet you in New York one of these days.
Anytime, man. The invitation's always there, my brother. All right, guys. So we're gonna hang out for a few minutes real quick here, guys. Yep. Mr. Soul, absolute legend. If you guys don't know his work, you should check out brothersgrimm.com and seriously take you're buying seeds and it's going to something. They're not just, pocketing money. They're spending fucking tens of thousands of dollars right now advocating for every one of the people watching here to be able to grow seeds still. You know what I mean? They're spending the money, like and for